So I'll just bring in Sini, I mean, from what Shashi had spoken about earlier in terms of, job losses and things like that they're sort of seeing. You're in the midst of hiring. That's what you told me earlier. How is that, I mean, how are you going about that? Take us through that.
So, our product is online coding classes for kids at the between the age of, starts from 8, right? So, the challenge for us, there was a huge surge in, demand. So,
Okay.
you need to meet the demand. Now, you need to bring the supply in. The supply is in terms of the internal staff as well as the online educators who are working based out of homes.
Right.
And plus, we had the basic challenge was the contact centers, because that would also support towards demand.
Right.
Now, when we talk about demand, it is more of engagement. Now, as on today, schools are closed,
Right.
TV channels, no entertainment is actually out there, and there's no engagement, especially when it comes to kids. There's no engagement at all. So that is where I think the relevance, our product becomes relevant, wherein we are engaging kids from their homes with the safety of their own, environments at home. That is where the surge of demand has come up, and there is a lot of traction from this point of view. That's where we had to add up resources to cater to the demand, make sure the supply is available, so that we can cover the market better.
Right.
Now, we have every week, we are inducting a batch of 70 to 80 new hires.
Okay.
And we are going on through the online training and in team wise, because when I speak about this 70-80 staff which is getting inducted for the permanent staff category, plus we have another 100 would be getting into the online home based educators, right? So we train them through the online method, and we have smaller teams further divided into, and we train them on their specialized skills. That's how we are able to meet the surge in demand and make this supply available. As of today, I would say the market is having a lot of anxiety related to job security, losing jobs. Payments are being done on time, whether they're getting paid salaries on time. So there's a lot of anxiety out there. So that is where I think we are catering to somehow, of easing this uncertainty and anxiety in the market wherein we are hiring. Right. We are ensuring that their employment is secure, because our product is placed from that perspective. Right. So we are upskilling. We are ensuring the current workforce is engaged. They are recognized. We are celebrating their success. We announce each, weekly basis. We celebrate the success on the public, channels which we have, and we make sure the new inductees are also being accompanied, buddied up with the existing staff, so that their skills are upgraded, and they are also made, up to the market to start at the earliest.
Right.
Quick. Yeah. Two things before I leave, because I have.
I just wanted to add something here, Mr. Sinha. Before you leave, I think we'll just take a group photo, which is for the magazine and for online data. So if everybody could come, I would request Ankush also if he could just sort of put the video on.
Yeah, let me just try, please.
Right. Yeah. In the meantime, Mr. Sinha, you can go ahead with what you're saying.
So what I was saying, this also lockdown has proved to be a blessing in disguise also, for at least for me, because I was pushing my learning team to do certain programs, move online as much as possible. But there was somehow the comfort was more in ILT driven programs.
Right.
But this 15-20 days, they have come up with a lot of new e-learning programs that we can leverage. Right. My recruiting team always had a mindset gap that the candidate has to be in front of me to onboard. Right. Now we have also developed SOPs to onboard candidates remotely. Those things have happened, those changes have happened, and people have really gone through a skill set and mindset change, especially in training, learning, and development team.
Right. Ruchika, are we good to go for the photo?
Yes, we can do that. Just a second. Give me 1 second. Just give me a second. Okay, so if we could just get a smile from everyone.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sinha. We'll get back to the discussion there. Right. So let me just throw the same question that I asked Mr. Sinha earlier to Mr. Kiran about the changes that we are going to see in organizational hierarchies, and also in terms of as we go forward, the skilling and training. How are we going to? Are there changes that we are going to see on that front as well?
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of changes in terms of the organizational hierarchy as well as in terms of how we train and upskill people. So one of the interesting things that what we see is a crisis like this have taught us that it's not important what your organizational hierarchy is, right? It's about going beyond the hierarchy, being a part of the teams, right? And delivering it along with them, right? So what it has also taught us is that if you were to do that, right? Today, COVID is not giving you time. So the speed at which you develop modules, the speed at which you communicate to your people, you train them, the speed at which you keep changing them, right, becomes most important. So at Apollo, what we did is we created a manual called a Red Book.
Right.
This Red Book is a comprehensive collection of what everybody in the hospital, right from my nurses to my doctors to my supply chain to my IT to HR to any other function for that matter, would do. Right? And how do you bring them together to work in a cohesive manner to deliver what you have to do? And this Red Book changes practically every week, which gets updated based upon your learnings on the ground, because none of us have seen COVID and how it works in the past, right? So we are all learning every day, and you need to document those learnings, communicate that across your system, ensure that that is understood and implemented on the ground. So what we did primarily is that we said the decision making will go by what we have told you on the COVID, right? In the Red Book, right? And Red Book also tells you not just on the COVID, on non-COVID patients. So suppose you get somebody with a hemorrhage, what do? Right? Would you ensure that he doesn't have any symptoms of COVID before you operate upon him?
Right.
For example, right? You need to ensure that, right? He goes to the fever clinic and then gets onto your system and then gets into the stuff, right? So when you do that, you don't have the choice of everything going up to whatever was your previous authority matrix, right? And then coming down, because you need to take rapid decisions. So this has led us to actually get into a delegation of authority, empowering people on the ground, right? Delegation of authority, empowering people on the ground, and just taking a stock of it at the end of the day to be available to them, to support them and guide them rather than asking for a report.
Right.
Here, we don't want too many managers. We want too many people working and less of managers who are coordinating and doing this. That's how technically your hierarchy levels and all become flat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Second, in terms of learning, e-learning wasn't very common, especially in the healthcare industry, because it's all about touch and feel.
Right.
What we've done is we have split our workforce into 3 parts. One part of the workforce, or 1/3 of the workforce, is actually resting, because when your epidemic goes really big, you need to have people who are prepared for it and who can be called in. And these people who are resting are the people who are going through learning at the same time, right? Because a lot of our people live in our hostels, live in our campuses or just near the hospitals, and they cannot go home, right? Not just because of the transport, but because of their, being availability near the hospital being there. So we have got them free training modules, right, which they will go through. They'll learn, they'll give exams, and they're upskilling themselves to be prepared for the next levels, right, in their respective things. The second thing that we have also done is that we have started engaging with families. And when you engage with families, your hierarchies doesn't matter. Who you are doesn't matter. What you're going to do for them is what is going to matter, right? So engaging with families and actually teaching them as to what their say son, daughter, or their spouse are doing, and how it is going to be relevant for the country and for their profession is going to make a huge difference. So the focus shifts from being customer focus to the employee focus, right? To redefine what your priorities are, right? Ensure that employee becomes your priority. Therefore, they take care of your customer, right? So this is what the major change that have done. The second thing that has done is we have many managers and leaders who are on the who are in their late 40s, early 50s, etc. Right? Here you need to train them on change management. Change management in terms of distributed working. Right? We were always used to meeting one another and talking. Now you are all distributed. Corona is going to keep us away for many more months. Social distancing is going to become a norm wherever, whether it is in our hospital, whether it is in our hostels, whether it is in our transport facilities like buses, or even in a simple OPD counter, where people queue up for the getting the OPD registrations done. Now social distancing is going to be a norm for the next year or so. So how do you recalibrate your entire machinery so that you are able to cater to your needs, without compromising on the social distance, but still make your services available to the society?
Absolutely.
If you see, Apollo hospitals are known to be chocker block with people seeking services, right? And you need to be available to all of them. So that stretches your resources within your hospital. And therefore, how does your leaders get trained to actually deal with this? Miss the personal touch, but don't miss the final goal, and still deliver what you need to deliver. How do you make your doctors adopt to e-consults? So the first time the patient has come, you have seen the patient. Subsequently, can you do an e-consult? So they have launched something called Apollo 24/7 on 5th of February this year. So we have widely circulated Apollo 24/7 so that we facilitate the e-consults. When people are at home, right, they want to still consult a doctor, even to say, hey, how do I protect myself from COVID? Hey, I have cough and cold. What do I take? Right. So if you provide a consult online, then people are more comfortable. So that actually takes care of our responsibility towards the society part. Absolutely. So how do you train your doctors to do it? How do you take care of the medical legal issues related to that? Tomorrow, how do you communicate to your patients that you are available in the eventuality that they come? If they come to the hospital, whom do they communicate with? How do they take care of these patients by maintaining all the protocols, etc.? Was the biggest challenge. And these shifts that we have done to handle these things are here to stay.
Absolutely. Now I'll turn the questions to Ankush, Ashwathy, and Krishna. With whatever has been going on, take us through where you see the challenges to, or how the scenario is sort of challenging the hierarchies. Or what are the changes you're going to see in your organization, or culturally, structurally, all of that. So your thoughts on these two.
Sure. So I can go. So I think first of all, Flipkart is non-hierarchy, right? So that's one of our cornerstones itself as a company. And we have ideas actually that come up from the ground, across the board. Be it a lot of grounds up innovation that happens even in our fulfillment centers based on people working there.
Right.
So, that's really embedded into our DNA per se. So I don't see that really taking a change per se in the new scenario. That being said, there are a few things that we need to think about, right? So in the new situation, we will have to be a lot more agile in terms of our crisis management. I think one of the biggest learnings and takeaways is how do we react to crises of these kinds, and especially in our pan-India presence. and we work with so many partners and so many sellers on our platform. And these sellers actually are not only important from an overall ecosystem or customers perspective, their own livelihoods also get impacted.
Right.
So how do you actually ensure that you provide a very robust crisis management SOP across the board is something that we've spent a lot of time on in the last few weeks as we emerge from this one. From a core culture perspective, I would say there are 3 values that are cornerstone for us.
Right.
I think audacity, bias for action, and customer centricity along with integrity.
Right.
And like I said at the start of my conversation, these continue to be values that will power us even in the new situation, and that's what I believe in firmly. So from that perspective, I think we are well set for the new situation.
Right. Ankush, what do you have to say here?
Yeah, so from a hierarchy point of view, I will agree with Krishna. I mean, like, we are in the same boat in the sense that similar organization with similar structures. It's going to be more fluid and agile going forward. I mean, it will move away from the traditional hierarchy because this kind of situation has put us in a scenario where you can't just stand up and say that this is not my job. Like, we do have our morning catch-ups with the senior leadership team. Everyone is doing whatever is possible, and it's spanning across domain. There are people who are contributing to technology. There are people, who are learning how to test and can support the testing team. There are people who are now taking up training that how to address a customer query on a call or on a chat, right? So everyone is doing their bit. So I think the key would be that how do you span the organization in such a manner that cross-functional workings emerge much more stronger. While most of the organizations do work in a cross-functional working environment, but I think this situation has given a scenario where cross-functional working is going to be the key. You really need to introspect that if I'm taking a decision within my function, how is it going to impact the other function? So from that point of view, I think more than the hierarchy, how do we operate? See, work from home is going to be a critical ingredient in our way of working going forward.
To ask you, will work from home sort of become the new norm as we go forward?
I don't know whether it will become the new norm or no, but it will definitely be a core ingredient in your way of working going forward.
Okay.
So whether it's a traditional organization or whether it's a new gen e-commerce or a tech organization, you will not be in a position to remove work from home because a lot of learnings will dwell out of this scenario. I'm sure we are all taking some number of measures towards taking care of our employees, their wellness, their mental health, and we are running employee assistance programs. But I think there are a lot of positives which will come out of this. If you look at it, I think people tend to be more productive at home, right?
Right.
So can we look at having a certain section of workforce operate from home or remote locations, right? So that probably will be the key ingredient in your way of working. So how do different functions work? Cross-function dependencies on one function on another. What kind of people can work from home? What kind of people need to come to office? So all these things will go out of these learnings. And as I said, work from home is here to stay. Just like COVID is here to stay, I'm sure work from home is here to stay. It's going to, I don't know whether it will become a norm or no, but yes, work from home will be, you will see more and more companies going that direction.
If I may, Manu, just to add to Ankush, if I can just add a point, I think, one of the learnings that we also had is even our learning and development programs for our top executives all the way down to the last employee, we had to actually pretty much go through a redesign of sorts. Because one of the insights is that when you're at home and when you're in a situation like this one, you can actually channelize some of the energy around learning. I think some of our panelists around the healthcare industry talked about it as well. And that's been a big learning for us. And we had actually a bunch of interns join us, over 150, 200 campus hires plus interns join us during this time. And we actually had to get them laptops somehow. So that they could actually join us. And we actually kept all their joining dates on the date that they were supposed to join us. And we pulled out a virtual onboarding program for them. and that program was designed in quick time, right from ground up, just to make sure that we honor the offers that we sent out, and secondly ensure that the onboarding experience itself doesn't get compromised. So one of the things is, can we actually look to do more of these kinds where we do distance-based learning for a lot of our employee engagement programs and not just rely on in-person training?
Right. Ashwathy, take us through what you think about what I'd asked.
Yeah, on the organization hierarchy. So Ankush and Krishna had pretty much stated, right? Hierarchy structures. We are talking about fluidity, and really, Manu, if I look at it, this is not for the first time we are talking about this. In most HR discussions forums, we are talking about right, how are we looking at hierarchies and structures? And I think the digitization, like really coming in, this was anyways getting extremely fluid. What COVID really accelerated is really talking this in a real sense, right? Like making it possible. In that sense, I think two things. What really happened was we were talking about decentralization. Decentralization did exist in various means, but with this happening, with this crisis, it actually transformed a lot more faster, right? When we now look at decentralization, we know there are teams that's taking action. They are taking decisions. They are moving forward. There is no more leadership approval discussions, right? So discussions have moved into really actions, really taking on the floor. I think what's really come up interesting, but there's some of the qualities, right? There are leaders that emerge from every nook and corners. There are ideas that's floating in. There are methods of how faster we could achieve, goals and new initiatives. I think that's very interesting, because I think this, we are talking about a mindset shift. We are also talking about new qualities emerging, like ownership, like leadership, I think Ankush mentioned about going beyond the call of duty, right? What is not really explained, what is not really perceived, people are able to go ahead and take such calls. I think what in other real sense we are talking about is roles getting expanded, it's about structures getting shifted. And I think this gives us enough courage, enough data to go ahead and make organizations that much more flatter. You already
are you also seeing something to what Krishna said about, using this time for learning, or even for onboarding for that matter?
Onboarding, we pretty much had another alternative, e-onboarding, because we are also operational in 9 cities. We wanted to ensure that's the same experience. What happens here at the corporate is transformed in various other cities. So we had come up with an e-onboarding. I think this crisis only accelerated and more sharpened in terms of having that implemented. So all our hirings and onboardings are e-onboarded, right from the first touch point to ensuring frequent touch points to ensure the new employee is comfortable and taken well care of. I think what this has really brought in terms of hiring, the way I see it is, there were hiring. We got about projections, numbers. I think now the way we look at hiring is slightly through a different, I think, deeper lens, which is about the real signs of it. I think now every role gets a lot more discussed in terms of larger impact, in terms of how this role goes on to expanding and what contribution happens. Earlier, the discussions would remain quickly around, hey, what's the numbers? I know here are the business plans. Can we go ahead and close it? To now moving into a very qualitative discussion around, signs of understanding roles. So I think in a way, if I look at this crisis, there are some healthy practices we have gone about doing it. Second, I remember even in the month of Jan, we were debating about, work from home as a policy. How many days should we really work from home, right? So we kind of did a study across organization to say, is work from home really feasible? Is collaboration going to get affected? Is FaceTime not really important? And suddenly here we are talking about actually work from home raises productivity. And also I think, like you mentioned, it's not about replacing remote working from actual working. It's about having multiple options where you experience these options and to really look at a very informed decision of where this can be applied, there are some places, of course, nothing can replace actually coming to work, meeting people. That gives you a different high. But we also have now realized work from home is a strong force. I mean, this is something we will not push anymore. We will really look at making policies and guidelines around making this, truly effective. Yeah.
Shashi, what is your sense of, what COVID-19 has sort of impacted in terms of hiring, training, skilling, and, even in the coming months? How do you see the market? What is your sense of that?
Before I answer that, my answer to this entire work from home scenario, I think we are right now in the middle of possibly the biggest social experiment in the world for a long time that is going to have a significant impact on the future of work. I think what a lot of people will be seeing is the impact of what we are doing right now on companies' productivity, on companies' cost structures, on impact on individuals, impact on families, and impact on the environment. So within the impact as far as companies are concerned, which parts of the business has productivity gone up? Which parts of the business has productivity remained same? Which parts of the business has productivity gone down? The second thing that people will look at is impact on individuals. A lot of us feed off energy of people when we work. While it looks like, work from home is great for individuals, but what is the impact on the family? Does the fact that I'm working from my home mean that my child has lesser place to play at home?
Right.
So and finally, all of us see these lovely photos and videos of clean places across. So will companies decide to work from home to help sustain cities? And finally, what does it do to costs? Companies invest a lot of money in lovely buildings across the center of the city, spending a lot of money.
Real estate.
If this actually works and if productivity is not dropping, do we still need to invest in those big offices in the centers of the city? What does that mean for the real estate industry then? So it's like a huge social experiment that we are all part of today, and it will definitely have a far-reaching impact as far as the quality of work, as far as the future of work is concerned. So that's definitely on. Second, sorry.
In terms of the, hiring, skilling, and
so obviously it's changing a lot. We are seeing a lot of companies that are now a lot more comfortable hiring on videos, on conference calls, etc. As a company, we've been pretty, sort of tech savvy. So we didn't have to make a lot of changes for onboarding, for training, etc. because we're already deploying a lot of technology to do a lot of that. But we will see companies adapt to that. We will see companies being more comfortable doing recruitment, at a distance. Indeed is also coming up, for example, with a product which is around virtual hiring events where you can hire virtually. Second, obviously with training and skilling, there'll be a lot more time to do skilling at this time specifically. So yes, a lot of that will be impacted, as will the future of work as it goes by.
That's something I want to, because we are coming to the end of the session. So I wanted to sort of get everybody's closing comments, about what COVID has really done to the workplace today, organizational structures, in terms of training, everything. And what does the future of work today look like? So we'll probably start with Sinha, your closing comments. We'll be short on time. So.
Yes, I just want to add to the point which we already discussed about hierarchy and the transforming well-being. So hierarchy, we are a startup, it's just 1 year old. So what I saw because of COVID is we have the middle level leadership rising up and taking up responsibility and responding to the challenges and becoming decision makers in the organization and getting their own role transformed. So that's something which I saw as a from the hierarchical point of view. So for us, it is open door policy, but during this COVID period, it has risen a lot of leadership in the middle management, right? The second thing what I need to speak about is a well-being. When we speak about, I don't know whether is it the time for us to start thinking, we are looking at a well-being at the workplace, right? We think about giving certain provisions and giving them medical facilities and other reward and recognition facilities, going on to tools and different well-being policies that we define. I don't know whether is it the time for us to start thinking we look at the family as a holistic space wherein the well-being has to be extended, because if this is going to be the future, wherein we talk about working from home, wherein the cohabiting with multiple organization space is what is actually the call for today, right?
Right.
So that is one thing. And the third thing which I would also say about is the agile nature of organization that is what is making it successful, and the resilience in each of the staff to stand up to the situation and to respond to the crisis or even to the surge in demand. I think that is what is making everything relevant as an employee as well as an employer. So this is what I would, contribute to.
Right. Krishna, your thoughts on the same? Your closing comments?
A lot of interesting comments from the other panelists, and I would tend to agree. I think in terms of just the employee well-being, I think a lot of focus has gone into physical well-being. I think the mental well-being aspect of it and its impact overall on the ecosystem around the family, I think that's going to become very important. Remote working is going to become a way of life, I believe. And that has its own share of positives, and potentially it could throw open a set of negatives as well that we need to actually, as organizations.
So before we go, I have to ask you, what are some of the negatives there?
No, I think the implications, some of the panelists talk about the implications on the family ecosystem itself, right? The fact that the lines between work and personal life get actually blurry. And we've seen that happen actually all through, and we've had to put policies in place to support employees through this period. For instance, encourage employees to bring their kids into meetings. And if a kid strolls into a meeting and when it's happening, it's okay. It's completely fine. Because it's actually a shared workspace now. And making sure that we support employees. Also, there are, single mothers as well. And, we need to make sure that we support them in this new situation, right? So from that perspective, how do we actually roll out programs for the broader family ecosystem? And that's one challenge as well that could come into play. Right? So I think that's going to be a very interesting thing. I think the future of the workplace itself in a lot of agility in decision making, removing hierarchies, barriers in terms of decision making, and letting decisions come from ground up as well across organizations, because knowing what's happening early on the ground is going to become critical for an organization of the future.
Absolutely. Ashwathy, what is your take on the future of work? What COVID has taught you, your personal lessons?
I think, Mano, apart from things around remote working from home and hierarchies and agility and that bit, I think to me, I think this has been my real learnings, right? I think when you're at office or pre-COVID era, there are spreadsheets to data to systems. There's a lot of talk around IQ-ish talk that goes about, right, in the discussion. And I think we bring so less of ourselves to work. To me, what COVID has made me realize is that it's so important to bring yourselves to work. Because I think in this last 2-3 weeks, what I've realized is there is a deeper sense of empathy. I understand my team members a lot more. I understand the challenges that they go through, because this is not something that's usually that comes out during the regular bit, right? To me, that's a beautiful quality, I think, that the COVID has sort of really pushed. I think the other thing that really has brought about is creativity. Creativity around all corners in terms of how we solve problems. Like as we said, initially there's a lot of going around, is work from home possible or not? What's really pushed is when the mandate happens, I think we all have the inner strength and courage to make things happen. It's just that when you're left with too much of choice, there's this there are pushbacks. I think to me, creativity and courage has sort of strongly, is up there. I think third, in terms of leadership, showing their own vulnerabilities, I think gets them so much closer to workforce. Because I think, like one of the panelists mentioned, you're on a call, you see them sort of quickly rushing to do something in the kitchen, right? You see somebody moving around, and suddenly you feel there is a sudden uniformity amongst all of us. There is nothing differentiating you and me because we're all going through the same fear. We're all talking the same language. Suddenly, I feel COVID has brought about a sudden uniformity. Like we all know what each of us are going through. And I think to me, seeing the leader is also vulnerable, you're also, you're human, you're also going through the same set of challenges, I think breaks all borders. Suddenly the discussions are that much more real, that much more enriching. I think we have truly become human resources now is really my take on this situation.
Shashi, your closing comments?
Yeah, so while this is a work from home experiment, what it is important to remember is that we are all at home in a crisis, trying our best to get work done. So I think it's important that leaders remain empathetic to their employees, understand that it's not possible to be always on. You will need people to take some time off to be able to take a breather. There will be things that need to be done at home with family. So I think as leaders, it's important that empathy is developed. It's important that you're able to keep your wits about. Understand that there are some things which you can do better when you're at home. For example, what we've realized is that our meetings are getting more productive. Because earlier we would have 5 people sitting in a conference room and 3 people joining on video. And you'll see that the 3 people who are on video aren't as participative as the people who are in the room. Not that they don't want to be participative, just that distant. But today it's sort of created a level playing field, right? I mean, everybody's on video. Therefore, meetings have become more productive. So I think it's important to see how this plays out. There'll be a lot of learnings for a lot of companies. It's best to then take it forward from there.
Right. I'm so sorry. I don't know what the disturbance was.
But that's okay. It's part of how we operate these days.
But Ankush, your closing comments. In the future of work, what does it look like?
The future definitely, Manu, is going to be a lot more interesting than we were pro-COVID or during this COVID phase. A lot of learnings to come out.
Right.
Some of them would be that while as people operations or as human resources, I think it is a lot more easier now to rally the entire organization behind one common cause or one common mission. And I think the young workforce that we all have has shown it during this crisis. People have gone beyond the call of their duty. They've stretched themselves, just to beat one common objective where the entire organization is working for. Secondly, I think somebody touched upon decision making. I think we'll get better and better at decision making. And, given the fact that, we are all in the middle of a crisis, we are taking better decisions. We are taking decisions much, much faster than in a traditional manner we used to take. Like there's not much of, discussion, debate and, overthinking of that sort of thing happening. It's like you're taking decisions on the fly. And these are all well thought of decisions. These are not like spontaneous, not thought of decisions. These are extremely well thought of decisions. It's just that people have that urgency to close the things and move ahead on that.
Right.
And I think last aspect would be that which Ashwathy also mentioned. Your people now much better.
True.
You know the other side of people, the humane side of people. You do your daily catch-ups, you do your daily stand-up with the teams, right? And of course, it's not just about work. People are developing new interests. Somebody has picked up a new hobby. So when we all go back to offices, whether it is 2 months down the line or 1 month down the line, I think the way we appreciate my colleague, right? It will be very, very different. And it will be very interesting. And I think people will understand and appreciate each other much more.
Right.
So these are some of the things that I feel that will come out as...
Ask one question which slipped my mind earlier, which is mostly, this whole talk about, hiring sort of slipping now and, things like that. Do you see that happening now and you see it picking up later? I think Shashi had mentioned that it will bounce back later, but
yeah, of course it will bounce back, and I think Shashi must be talking from an overall point of view, but it will definitely scale back. I mean, most of the organizations have curtailed hiring for obvious reasons, right? But once the situation approaches business as usual, I think it will bounce back, and I think. Once the overall, it also needs to be looked at from an overall economic scenario.
Absolutely.
What the government is doing, what the state government is doing, what our organization is doing, and how quickly we can recover, how quickly we can bounce back to business as usual. right? So it's a kind of a cyclical effect that will have. But yeah, I agree to what Shashi said. It will bounce back, definitely, for sure.
Right. So, Mr. Kiran, final words on what you see as the future of work, hiring, skilling, all of that.
Okay. While I agree with my fellow panelists on most of the points they said, I have a few additional points to add to the way we see. I'm sure our grandchildren will study the management and they'll study a pre-COVID era and a post-COVID era of management.
Right.
And when I say that, there are a few things that we observed being in healthcare industry. New York Times have recently reported that the incidence of heart attack, myocardial infarction, have come down by 40%.
Okay.
Post the COVID. And this is an interesting thing for us to know because the stress levels have come down.
Right.
Whether the disease has gone or not is a separate thing, but the stress levels have come down. So what's going to happen? COVID or a virus does not understand the difference between who you are in the hierarchy, what your profession is, and what you're doing, right?
Right.
So what I see post-COVID era is the companies are going to spend a lot on health because there is there's an awareness that has come in among all the people of the value of being healthy.
Right.
I think the biggest cost that all these companies have, the biggest fixed cost, is the cost of talent.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, a lot of companies will actually look at having optimal talent,
right,
looking at productivity, understand the definition of job evaluations,
right,
and using it to actually have the most optimal and productive people. So the productivity per employee would increase. Since the social distancing will become a norm for some time,
right,
the pressure on office space is going to be high, because if you're housing 100 people in an X square meters of area, now you can only house 40 people in the same area. That is going to push your work from home as more as a norm. Right? Now, many people who are not used to using technology for their day-to-day activities have actually tasted it for the last 40 days, and they'll taste it for a few more months. So organizations will become much more technology savvy and much more technology enabled. Many people have spoken about physical and mental well-being, right? That's going to become focus because people have spent time with their families. People have got used to going to malls, recreation facilities, and so on and so forth, which will be among the last ones to open. So people will go back and understand the family values, the pleasure and the learnings of spending time with your family members, and how it is going to impact your family better.
Right.
Work environments are going to become more flexible, right? Till now, this is my policy. You have to come on time. You have to go on time. It's going to be flexi working is going to become more and more. There's going to be a huge positive impact on the environment. I don't know how many of you noticed the leaves are greener on the trees. So noise pollutions have come down. Right. So people have even enjoyed that, even if you have gone out to buy vegetables and groceries. So when you do more work from homes, right? When your office space becomes more premium, right? You'll have less traffic on the roads. You'll have less pollution, right? You have a better quality of life and a better quality of air. And the entire paradigm of how we are looking at your own quality of life is going to change. And this is going to put pressure on all of us as CHROs to look at your resources differently, to bring in a better work-life balance or a better work-health balance into the whole thing. And that's a big shift that I see. In terms of talent, while many companies, including the healthcare, might have put a temporary freeze on recruitments, it's going to bounce back.
Right.
And when it goes to bounce back, all the jobs are going to be back. Right. So I don't see that as major fear factor, while I see a lot of reports on the media. Right. The larger thing is going to be adopting to the changed work environment, and the faster we adopt, the more successful we'll be.
Absolutely. I think we've had a very fascinating discussion, and of course there are many more areas that we could have touched upon or we can touch upon, but we are short on time and we've spent this 1.5 hours quite nicely. So I just want to thank all of you for joining me today. And of course, I mean, you've all been at the forefront of this whole pandemic. Warriors, people who are delivering, all of this that has been happening. So just want to, from Forbes India, thank all of you for joining us today, and of course, continue the great work that you're doing.